Trump Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt spoke with reporters today at the White House in a desperate attempt to spin Donald Trump's unilateral and likely illegal war on Iran and the subsequent political fallout, including Trump calling for regime change. Not only did Leavitt struggle to deal with all of that, she also indicated that Trump may assassinate the Iranian Ayatollah as well. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as a reminder, Donald Trump, who said, listen, no new wars on my watch, will be a nation and a world at peace, not only initiated a unilateral and, again, potentially, likely, illegal drone strike against Iran, but then he made an ass out of all of his supporters by saying, actually, you know what, regime change for Iran's a good thing. We should have regime change. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be regime change? MAGA, M-I-G-A, make Iran great again. That's Trump's new public position. Now listen, the Iranian regime sucks, but you campaign publicly on no new wars, no new forever wars, no new regime change wars, the likes of which occurred in Iraq and Afghanistan, and you spent the past several years complaining about. Now you're doing a 180. And it's up to this lady, Karoline Leavitt, to try to sell it. And I don't think she does a good job. We're going to play some clips from her recent exchange with the reporters, starting with this.
When the president is floating the idea of regime change, how does he believe that should be accomplished? Through the Iranians, the Israelis, or the Americans? The president's posture and our military posture has not changed. The president was just simply raising a question that I think many people around the world are asking. If the Iranian regime refuses to give up their nuclear program or engage in talks, we just took out their nuclear program on Saturday night, as you all know. But if they refuse to engage in diplomacy moving forward, why shouldn't the Iranian people rise up against this brutal terrorist regime? That's a question the president raised last night. But as far as our military posture, it hasn't changed.
So nowhere in Donald Trump's Truth Social did he talk about the Iranian people rising up against the Ayatollah, okay, which would still be considered a bit provocative, especially given that the United States has a long, dark history of facilitating coup and regime changes, right? So you could even interpret that sort of thing as a threat. But Trump didn't say what she said. He just talked about regime change, period. And she's trying to, again, spin what he said to, I guess, discourage people from believing that Trump is open to the sort of, again, forever war that he used to criticize. But the words are there, and this is the problem with Trump people. When Trump says something, apparently you're not supposed to take it literally. You're supposed to take it seriously. And then when he says something serious, well, you don't take it seriously. He actually meant something else entirely. It's a constant shifting of the goalposts that they have to do for a supposed master communicator, right? Because if you take his words at face value, he's insane and stupid. Here's another clip.
If Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, is there a plan by the U.S. to add oil to the global market? We saw the Biden administration do a strategic petroleum release. Is there a plan?
I can assure you the administration is actively and closely monitoring the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranian regime would be foolish to make that decision. We'll see you all later, okay?
Yeah, so she was ready to hightail it out there. You see that? Yeah, we definitely have a plan for dealing with the Strait of Hormuz, and it would be really stupid. Bye, I got to go. And she just drops the mic and runs. Now, this is something that we discussed in a previous video. The Strait of Hormuz is a choke point for much of the global oil supply, and Iran has quite a bit of control over it. And so that they may seed it with mines. They may try to, tamper with the logistics of ships going in and out of the area. There's some reporting indicating that they're doing that. They may attempt a full-blown blockade, and that would have disastrous consequences for the price of oil, and consequently, the price of gas here at home at the gas pump. And by the way, if that happens, which hopefully it won't, but if it does, Democrats should be merciless in blaming Trump, because it will be objectively 100% his fault, the direct consequence of him initiating those strikes against Iran in the first place. So again, Democrats, if you're watching, do not assume that facts speak for themselves. You aggressively, persistently, nonstop draw the connection between Trump's terrible ideas and the disastrous effects and implications for the American people. But again, no articulation of a strategy, just it would be foolish. And indeed it would be. I mean, at that point, again, it would screw over the Iranian economy. It would screw over everybody else in the Middle East, the rest of the world as well. Like, that is certainly a break glass in case of emergency, but it's hard to believe that we're not edging ever closer to that potential result. Here's another clip.
On regime change, that question of if the president was supporting that idea of having Iran's supreme leader assassinated, he's now floating this idea of regime change. Is that an idea that you would consider?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president. I just explained his truth to you last night.
Caroline, on regime change.
So again, on regime change, you guys thinking about assassinating the Iranian supreme leader, given that Trump indicated, he's at least flexed and rattled his saber in previous Truth Social posts that they know where the Ayatollah is and it would be easy to take him out. Instead of saying, of course, the president of the United States has no intentions at this time of initiating such an attack against the Iranian head of state. That would be a major escalation. Obviously, it depends on what Iran does. You could say it all sorts of ways without totally ruling it out and saying, actually, the ball is in Iran's court. I mean, obviously, if Iran, viciously attacks the United States in response, then we reserve the right to do such a thing. Instead, she's just like, I'm just gonna listen. I don't want to speak for Trump. Well, lady, that's your job. Your job is to quote unquote get ahead of the president. You're supposed to be his chief communications, public face. You're the White House press secretary. Your entire job is to speak on his behalf. And if you're not going to do that, well, then you sure seem useless and unnecessary. But yeah, folks, this is pretty disturbing stuff, right? And this doesn't this doesn't convey a lot of confidence in the Trump administration's current strategy. As we discussed in a previous video today, Iran actually launched missiles at U.S. air bases, at least 10 in Qatar. Now, we have since found out that they were interdicted successfully by Qatari defense forces, by anti-air forces in Qatar. And then we have also learned credible reporting that Iran coordinated with the United States effectively to give them a heads up, like, hey, listen, we got to hit you back, but we're gonna work with you to try to reduce the casualties. And as of now, it's reported that there were no casualties at all. Now, what Trump will do in response to this, maybe he'll let it go, maybe not. We'll see what happens. But again, there's a very real risk of a direct hot war, direct attacks. I mean, that was an attack. That wasn't attacked by Iran against U.S. military forces. I think it's Al Udeid in Qatar, which has 10,000 Americans in it, 8,000 U.S. troops, and I think 2,000 civilians. And on Trump's watch in his first term, Iran also attacked U.S. air bases and actually struck blows. It didn't kill anybody, but it caused brain damage. It wounded U.S. troops and caused brain damage to U.S. troops, and that was on Trump's watch. So clearly Iran is not, unwilling to actually hurt and try to kill U.S. personnel. So who knows what will happen from this? But Karoline Leavitt's attempts to spin this in a way that is palatable to the American people just doesn't seem to be cutting it. And the initial polling is not looking good in this respect. Now, maybe that will change. You never know with the Trump administration and what they may do. But this is pretty lackluster, and it explains why she was so eager to basically cut and run, be like, hey, I'm not answering questions, good luck, and just dip out after taking a few questions. We'll see what happens at the first formal press briefing, which I imagine is either tomorrow or Wednesday. But this is not good. She's going to have her work cut out for her if the media actually dares to ask reasonable questions, because the facts don't seem to be on Trump's side. She talks about, as you all know, we eliminated their nuclear program. Well, actually, increasing reports are indicating that that's not true. They severely damaged it, but that the damage is not irreversible. And much of the enriched uranium was actually relocated in advance of the attack. So it is TBD, the extent to which the U.S. has severely damaged the Iranian nuclear program. So by several metrics, it seems like this mission was a failure, right? And then, of course, you have to get into the rationale. What U.S. intelligence actually exists to justify this, unilateral strike that potentially violates the law? And the Trump administration has been very coy about it, indicating that they actually don't have anything to share, that there is no compelling intelligence to justify what they did. But again, we're kind of left in the dark at the moment. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.